Hello and welcome to what will hopefully be the only video you'll ever need to watch on how to properly implement high repetition or high volume calisthenics for the sake of enhancing your fitness, strength, and muscle. A few things right off the bat. I will be cursing in this video. Deal with it however you deem appropriate. Just don't come at me in the comments for it because frankly, I don't give a fuck. I don't want this video to be monetized because I'm doing it out of the, I guess I can't really say goodness of my heart because I possess neither goodness nor a heart. I'm doing it on a whim. Good for you. Second, if you want to skip all of the preamble and philosophy discussions, check out the chapter marker. You will get to the set and rep schemes a lot faster than suffering through me babbling. Thirdly, I will not be providing any kind of sources, links, what have you. Believe me or don't, do whatever suits you. And sort of linked to that, if you get hurt, I am not responsible. Unless I'm the one who pushed you off the dip bars, I'm not at fault for you getting injured. Stay within your limits, stay smart. So, what are we talking about here? High repetition or high volume calisthenics. I will be using those terms interchangeably. And what we are doing is we are using high volume calisthenics and we are employing them in a heavy light fashion throughout the workout. So we will start with what is the relatively speaking heaviest of the exercises, go through a medium phase where we're doing medium heavy, medium repetition sets, and then finally finish off with the light phase where we're doing a lot of reps at a relatively speaking lighter weight. That said, do not let any of this fool you. Throughout the workout, you will notice that no part of this actually feels light. That is fully intended. We are trying to hit as many of your muscle fibers as possible to absolutely maximize strength and muscle building. So I'm just checking my notes here. I can already see and hear and feel people getting alarmed when I'm talking about high repetition calisthenics because there's a lot of myths surrounding this precise concept and calisthenics in general, of course. One of the most common myths that I've seen is that calisthenics doesn't build strength because the loads are too light, and this is applied doubly to high volume calisthenics. And to that I say, that's complete nonsense. There is a ton of evidence, you can go out there and look for it, that is very clear on the matter. And secondly, submaximal loads absolutely build strength. All you need to do is to look at people like construction workers, farmers, people working in logistics that do move and carry submaximal loads throughout the day. They are easily far stronger than your typical desk jockey. Kind of linked to that is the notion that calisthenics and high repetition calisthenics don't build muscle. This one I can kind of understand because depending on how you program your calisthenics, you might actually find that they are more towards enhancing your muscular endurance or your power endurance even, or just cardio endurance. That is not a fault of high repetition calisthenics. That's a question of how you're applying those high repetition calisthenics. If you are programming them in a way that is primarily meant to enhance certain qualities that are not directly focused on hypertrophy, then that's what you're going to get. And hypertrophy at best might be a secondary benefit of doing calisthenics that way. Similarly here, I will actually go back to my previous example. If you look at people working in logistics, farming, construction, working with submaximal loads all day long, they're also typically more muscular than your average desk jockey. So those are the two big ones. Then there's kind of derived off of the second one, there's a third myth that calisthenics can build a decently strong, decently muscular upper body, but will fail to supply a sufficient stimulus to the legs. And that one is honestly a bit of a kernel of truth layered with a lot of misconception. Because if you think, or if someone tells you that your legs can become as big and as strong as someone who is capable of squatting triple body weight using just calisthenics, they're probably lying to you. Because at some point, the specificity of things becomes so important and so central to the adaptation that you're seeking that you cannot go through enhancing different qualities and sort of still getting a transfer to another quality that you're sort of indirectly aiming for. That said, I feel like there's a few things that need to be mentioned here. Obviously, doing calisthenics, no matter whether low repetition, high repetition, or even weighted calisthenics, will not turn you into a powerlifter or a strongman, because doing those things will turn you into those things. And the other thing is, they will not give you that same physicality that those people have. Because again, they're doing very specific things that require specific adaptations that are then shaping their body a certain way. Then you also have to ask yourself if you want to look that way. Even for bodybuilders, like professional, high-level bodybuilders that are on the juice, frankly, I don't know a whole lot of people that actually want to look like that, you know. We all want to look muscular and lean and jacked and stuff, pretty much all of us. But there's a difference between what looks good, in my opinion, and what professional bodybuilders do. Now, I respect what they do. You know, they put in a lot of hard work and they put their bodies through things I frankly would never even consider. And yeah, I respect what they do, but keep in mind that what they're doing, and really any professional athlete, what they're doing is really not good for their long-term health. What I'm talking about here is high volume calisthenics for the sake of your average person who's working a job, whose day job isn't to lift heavy weights, but who's working a job, who probably has a family, possibly has kids or a dog or something, and, you know, a social life, because that's a thing people can have, I've heard, and who also wants to, again, enhance their health, their strength, their muscularity, their leanness. Just live better and become stronger, because healthier, stronger people die less than less healthy, weaker people. And that's kind of the goal that we're shooting for. And if your training isn't making you healthier and stronger, then you're probably not doing it right. And finally, I will say this much. If you are on the younger side and you fast forward to the time where you are 60, 65, 70 or whatever, especially when it comes to leg training, and you can get to that age and you're still doing 20 or even 15 or even 10 pistol squats per leg, you're winning at life, man. Like, seriously, you're good. You're golden. You're so beyond the curve that nobody should even care about the fact that at some point in time, you could theoretically have trained to a triple bodyweight squat and you didn't. You're fine. Trust me, you'll be okay. So that's kind of the last thing that I want to mention on the weightlifting and body weight comparison, or the myths thing. One thing that is absolutely a fair statement is that there is no equivalent to the deadlift in the body weight world. No exact equivalent, at least. That is 100% true. That doesn't mean that you can't train those same muscle groups differently. That doesn't mean you can't do things that will indirectly make you better at the deadlift. When I was a not particularly advanced calisthenics practitioner and I was doing bridges as my main hip spine exercise, I was able to go to the gym once as an experiment and, you know, deadlift almost double my body weight, with somewhat bad form, admittedly, for a single rep. And again, I wasn't very advanced in calisthenics at that point. So that being said, I am absolutely not trying to sell you on the idea that you should or must do only calisthenics. If you are using calisthenics as a complement to your weight training, or you're using weight training as a complement for your calisthenics, 100% do that. Feel free to do it. Be my guest. In fact, don't be my guest, because I'm not hosting you. Just do what's right for you. And if anybody on the internet or in real life has a problem with the training modalities that you're picking for yourself, please squarely let that be their problem. You're doing what is right for you, you're doing what's fun for you, hopefully, and you're doing what is benefiting you. And that's the only thing that matters. So, yes, you can sort of do roundabout training to practice things that will help you with a deadlift. You can just deadlift. Just deadlift. Just do it. It doesn't matter. I promise you, nobody relevant is judging you for combining multiple modalities. So, yeah, do what's right for you. All right. So, we are going to move on to actually talking about not the workouts itself, but what kind of mindset that we're adopting or adapting to when we are getting into high volume calisthenics, again, with this heavy light system, with the idea of doing all of the things that we talked about earlier. The most important thing, especially in calisthenics, when you're trying to build muscle and strength, is that you need to have a very solid connection between your brain and your muscles, the so-called mind-muscle connection. And you want to be constantly working on cultivating this connection, this ability to truly tense the muscles that are doing the work. And it starts actually by making sure that you are not only getting in the right position, but maintaining those proper positions. So you're making sure that your shoulder blades are in the right position, or that your knees are properly aligned with your toes, and so on and so forth. That you are making sure that you're not setting yourself up for injury because your shoulders are shrugged, stuff of that nature. And then when you are in the correct position and you're maintaining that position with the right amount of tension, then you actually also tense the muscles that are supposed to do the work. With calisthenics, most movements that we're doing are compound movements spanning at least 3 joints, more often than not. And it is very easy for accessory muscles to come in and help you out with stuff, or for you to try to cheat with momentum and whatnot. Avoid that. Avoid that. You're leaving gains on the table instead of getting the most out of what you're doing. And that is a waste of time, and we don't want to be wasting time. We want to make use of our time. We want to get into the workout, get out of the workout, get the benefits, and be done with it. We're not trying to make working out our entire life. So that means you really need to learn how to tense the muscles, and that will be important because tension in the muscle is really the only currency it understands. Time under tension, metabolic stress, and of course, microscopic muscular damage are all dependent on tension. Without tension, none of that happens, and so there is neither strength nor muscle growth. That's just how it is. Secondly, most of the sets, and I will explain where the exceptions are, most of the sets are done to failure. And when I say to failure, I don't mean you finish when the rep is kind of extra hard. I mean, if you struggle for a whole 15 seconds to get back up in a dip, congratulations on your Herculean effort. Now lower yourself again, and if you still cannot get out of the bottom position, that's failure. Anything else, anything less than that is not failure. If you're not going to failure, I'm not saying you will not get any benefits, because that's probably a lie too, but again, you're leaving benefits on the table that you could be getting instead. Kind of linked to both of these things is that we will be going with a certain cadence. And that cadence, again, with one exception, which I will explain later, is a count of 2 when you're lowering, a count of 1 in the bottom position, then pushing back up as hard as you can. Even if you slow down during the set, maintain the intent of pushing up fast. And depending on the exercise, there might even be an argument to be made for a second of waiting at the top. Like, for example, in a pull-up, where you really want to make sure that you're squeezing those muscles between the shoulder blades and getting the most out of the contraction. This cadence is very important because it plays perfectly with maintaining tension. And yes, this kind of cadence will likely lead to you dropping reps, as in, if you were able to do 15 dips before, maybe with this cadence you can do 8. That is perfectly okay. That is perfectly all right, and it is 100% desired. Because number one, you should always leave your ego out of any kind of lifting, whether it's yourself or an external weight. And really, probably most things in life, just leave your ego out of it. Just your tiny bit of personal growth here. And secondly, because you are getting way more out of those reps than you would be if you look like some sort of earthworm that's being electrocuted. So, as they say, don't count your reps, make the reps count. Although I will say that there is one section where you kind of do have to count your reps, so don't forget that idea entirely. Now, with all of that said, there is one last thing I want to mention. When it comes to the mindset, we've talked about cadence, we've talked about mind-muscle connection. Just make sure what you're doing when you're working out is to think of it not as trying to progress as quickly as possible with your reps, but instead trying to get the most out of your reps that you can. This is critically important. You can apply this same philosophy to weight training, mind you, but I find that in particular in bodyweight training, if you train with the necessary humility of saying that the exercise being perfected, if you will, and your increase in control and tension is what is really helping you advance, if that's sort of your mindset, you will get so much more out of your workouts than if you're just trying to chase a number. All right. That's enough preamble. Let's get into the actual set and rep schemes. So like I mentioned earlier, we are doing something of a heavy light system. So we start out with the heavies. And I want to mention one thing. None of these set rep schemes are my own invention. I have copied them off of other people. I will be giving credit where credit is due. And yeah. Maybe the compilation is my own, but maybe there's someone else out there who had the same exact idea as I did before I had that idea. I didn't check. The first section is going to be the heavy section, like I mentioned, and that is, we're going to follow what is called the Joe Hardigan method. I learned that from Paul Wade, who has authored Convict Conditioning and a bunch of other books in the bodyweight sphere. And he talks about a former mentor who used to do this as sort of his heavy workout set rep scheme. We start out with an exercise that you can do anywhere from 1 to 5 repetitions of. Typically a little closer to 5 is better, but you can start wherever your starting point is. And you do one set of that exercise. So for example, if this is you doing pistol squats, you would do 5 pistol squats. Then you rest for 1 minute and you go into doing 4 pistol squats. Then you rest for another minute and you do 3 pistol squats, and so on and so forth until you rest for a minute and you're doing 1 pistol squat. So the sequence is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1 minute of rest in between each set. And the idea behind it is that you're getting 15 quality heavy reps with going to failure more often than if you were doing a traditional 3 times 5 with 2 minutes of rest. And I personally find that it is a good way to sort of really wake up your nervous system and to help you activate more of your muscle fibers so that eventually, as time goes on and you become stronger and capable of activating more muscle fiber, you can then train that muscle fiber and make it grow. If you are doing stuff like jump training or skill training for like hand balancing, for handstand push-ups or the like, I would actually do that before this section. So, if you're doing, again, practice for handstands or planches or stuff of that nature, do that first. Do your jump training before this section. But what I would recommend is if you're doing something like negatives, for example, for chin-ups, because you haven't gotten around to doing your first chin-up yet, this is the actual section. The Hardigan method is a great way to do your chin-ups, like negative chin-ups or partials or whatever other exercise that you're kind of working on right now that you can still do a full rep of. This would be an ideal spot to place those because it gives you the focus to do those exercises properly with a sufficient number of repetitions without completely overdoing it. Once you have completed this section, give yourself about 4 to 5 minutes of rest. Oh, and one more thing here. We're not too concerned about the cadence. It's okay to use a little bit of bounce. Just make sure that things are controlled. But this is the part of the workout where I would say that it doesn't matter as much how low or how quickly you're lowering and coming back up again. Just make sure you're doing things as technically clean as possible. And if you don't go to full muscular failure, but rather until your technique breaks down, that's perfectly all right as well, by the way. But after those 4 to 5 minutes of rest, that's where sort of the heart of this workout comes in. And that is, it's a method that I copied off of Athlean X. I call it the 3X method. I don't remember what they call it actually. And it's super simple. You take an exercise that you can do, I would say anywhere from 8 to 25 reps of. You can even go as high as 30 or even higher. Technically, I just like to stay within that domain of 8 to 20, 25 maybe. And you go ahead and you do one set. And here, the cadence is important. Make sure you're squeezing hard. Make sure you're doing that 2 seconds down, 1 second at the bottom. Quick raising, and then possibly a 1 second pause at the top. You do as many reps as you can. You really bang them out. You make sure you go to failure. That is your starting number. So for example, if you were doing dips and you got to 10 dips, then 10 is your starting number. From this point on, you never rest more than 90 seconds between sets of dips. And you keep going until the total number of dips, including those first 10, equals 30 or 3 times the original number. So for example, your first set might be 10 dips, then you rest for 90 seconds and you bang out another set of 8 dips. So now you're at 18. That means you still need to do 12 for this part of the workout to be done. You can also expand this number. So you could go from 3x all the way up to theoretically 10x if you want to do that. If you have extra time or you really want to practice that movement and sort of work on enhancing your repetitions in a set, or maybe you're kind of hitting a plateau and you feel like a little extra volume might help you break through it, you can absolutely do that. I personally tend to stick to 3x. And one more note I'm going to add in here is that let's say you're doing your sets of dips and theoretically you've already hit 30 dips, but you still have 2 more reps or 3 more reps in you. Do those 2-3 reps. Again, we are going to failure. The goal is to get at least to 30, but if you go a few reps over that in the pursuit of going to failure, then that is perfect. That is great. That just means you did better than you were expecting to. Awesome. Once you have completed this section, you want to make sure that you're resting for another 3 to 4 to even 5 minutes. Make sure you kind of catch your breath, let your muscles have a second to sort of recharge a little bit. And then we're getting into the light section of the workout. And the light section of the workout actually starts out with a drop set. This drop set should contain at least 3 exercises, but if you get somewhat creative with it, you can typically do a whole lot more. Barriers coming down, I'll be right with you. So, if you were doing, let's say, an upper body push workout and you were doing dips in the section before, in this section, you might start out with decline push-ups. That is, your hands are lower than your feet. Then you might rep out as many of them as you can. Again, respecting that cadence that we were talking about, making sure you're squeezing the muscles that are working and maintaining good positions. Then you transition into flat normal push-ups, and then maybe you go into push-ups with your hands elevated, so incline push-ups. And you do that for as many reps as you can. So you go for the decline, you go to failure, you transition into flat push-ups to failure, and then you go into incline push-ups to failure. We are not actually counting the reps here, though. This is critical. This is the last section that we were talking about, and the Hardigan method. Those are the spots where we actually count the reps. Here we are not counting because we're just trying to exhaust the muscles to the maximum. Between those drop sets, you can pause anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. and just go through this whole thing 3 times, okay? Once you've done that, give yourself 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of a breather. Actually, 5 might be too much and 4 might be excessive too. Let's go 2 to 3 max. And then you want to hit an isometric pose. So if you were doing push-ups or pushing up until now, then you might want to do like a wide grip push-up pose where you're sort of lowering yourself halfway, and then you're just trying to hold the position for as long as you can. And trust me, even though if you were fresh, this would be easy, by this point, it will hurt and it will burn. And you will probably curse me and curse yourself and curse all of the things that led to us two crossing paths via this video. And, that gave you the idea of doing all of that stuff. And that's okay. I will gladly take your curses upon me. My soul is already very heavy. So, yeah. Hold it for as long as you can, and then take a 15 to 30 second break in between your isometrics. And once you have done that, you have completed one whole workout of, for example, upper body push or upper body pull or legs. So, we are now actually getting into the third and final section of this video, the programming and closing notes. Now, one thing I want to mention with all of this is that, again, while I have primarily done this video with your average Joe in mind, who is not necessarily practicing for a specific sport, you can still apply this if you are some kind of an athlete, playing basketball, you're a runner or whatever. You just need to program smartly. My personal recommendation is follow one of two paths. Either go upper body push, upper body pull, and then lower body, and cycled through that twice in a week and give yourself 1 day of rest. Or if it is sort of accompanied with any kind of athletic practice, sports practice, what have you, then you could go upper body push and pull on the same day, and then having lower body on a separate day, and then kind of arranging that after your athletic practices. So, for example, if you practice Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then Monday you might, after practice, go into the upper body stuff, and then on Wednesday you might do legs, and then on Friday you might do upper body again, and then Saturday you do legs. Or if you are practicing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you have a game on Saturday, for example, you might do Monday practice followed by upper body, Wednesday practice followed by lower body, Friday practice followed by nothing, and then after your game on Saturday, you do a full body workout. You can also program a little bit of extra core work, especially after your leg training, but honestly, you can throw in core at any point in all of this. What I would also recommend doing is that if you're doing multiple upper body push and pull workouts in the week, is that to make sure that you're doing upper body push in the horizontal and in the vertical plane, and the same thing for your upper body pull. So stuff like pull-ups as well as stuff like rowing. And one important note I will give you on this is that any and all upper body pull workouts that are vertical should also contain at least a little bit of horizontal pulling, just for the sake of your posture and those small muscles that make sure that you don't hunch over with time. Because unfortunately, vertical upper body pull can be very lat heavy, and that can actually cause you to hunch over more, depending on how you go about it. Secondly, for your lower body, I would definitely recommend having one workout that's a bit more knee focused, so more into like your squat variations, lunges, stuff of that nature. And for your other lower body workout to be more sort of glute hamstring focused, so more hip dominant. You can throw in calves for both, however you like. Maybe you don't need that all that much. And then your conditioning, you can either place in between the workouts, or depending on how you're going about it, you might actually want to do your runs before you do your strength training or immediately after. That's kind of up to you. Try to figure out what works best for you and then go with that. On a different but related note, when it comes to programming, we also have to talk about recovery. So all the training in the world won't do you a whole lot of good if your nutrition sucks and if you can't recover properly. That's just how it is. Make sure that you're eating good quality food. Make sure you're eating the right amount for you, whether your goal is more along the lines of building up or maybe losing a little extra bulk. And make sure that you sleep as good as you can and that you're reducing as much stress in your life as possible. I know that isn't always realistic to get everything perfectly dialed in because we're all busy, we're all, stressed, we all got jobs, or sometimes we're stressed because we don't have a job. It is what it is. Life is not easy and it doesn't, get easier with time oftentimes. So do your best, man. I'm not going to sit here and judge you for your struggles. All right. Then finally, one last note before I close out. I do recognize and realize that what I am proposing here is in and of itself a bit of a proof of a fair amount of athleticism. So I don't necessarily recommend that people who are complete beginners to the domain of training immediately jump into this head first. I would actually recommend that you do slightly simpler full body workouts 3 times a week, maybe for 2 to 3 months with rep ranges that you can handle well, kind of building a basic amount of conditioning and just strength and sort of allowing your muscles and your tendons and everything in your body to adapt to the idea of being hit with training in the first place. And then once you've done that bit of buildup, then you can get into like high repetition stuff. At that point, if you're making sure that everything is balanced and if your nutrition is good, you should be avoiding any kind of overuse problems, and you should have the necessary constitution, if you will, to sustain these efforts and to grow from them rather than to break down from them. All right, that's all from my side. I hope this video helped you. Hell, if it helped even a single person see a way forward on how to train productively, even in a low resource environment, I think it has fulfilled its purpose. And either way, I wish you all the best with your training. And as always, train hard and train smart.